1 minute ago. Jennifer Lawrence vomited during testimony. Details of Diddy's sick contract published 10 years from now. What will you regret doing too much of interviews? That's how Jennifer Lawrence began, a dry smile flashing beneath tired eyes. But this wasn't a press junket. This wasn't late-night television or a red carpet. This was a federal courtroom, and her name, sealed for nearly a decade, had just been read aloud for the first time in connection with a case that could shift the entertainment industry forever. The courtroom was advised to proceed with discretion. Viewers, reporters, and even the jury had been warned. What they were about to hear wasn't a script. It was testimony. Day 8 of the federal trial against Sean Diddy Combs had arrived, and for the first time, Jennifer Lawrence was stepping out from behind the screen. Not to act, but to remember. She didn't bring a contract. She didn't bring a lawyer. What she brought was a letter, handwritten, torn at the edges, and dated 2012. It read, "To whoever's pulling the strings, this is your last warning. I won't let you buy me. I won't disappear. And I won't be the next Cassie." Back then, Cassie hadn't even filed her lawsuit. She was 22, a rising star, fresh off a breakout role in The Hunger Games. She was told it was a gala, a charity event for young actors. No press, just creatives, film development. A black SUV with no plates picked her up. Her phone was taken at the gate. The release form she signed was blank. The room she entered wasn't filled with cameras. Just red lights, dark hallways, men in suits, and women in masks. She was bait. Jennifer told the court how it started. The sound of a hallway too quiet. The smell of something clinical masked in perfume. And a door marked not by a name, but a number. Inside, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was controlled. She remembered a girl exiting the room next door, tears on her face. Another girl never came out at all. She remembered smiling because that was the rule. You smiled, you played your part, and you prayed you didn't end up in the wrong room. She didn't sleep for 3 days after that night. She told the court what she had never told anyone. The images didn't leave, the hallway, the silence, the smell. They haunted her long after her face became a fixture of pop culture. In 2012, her media team blamed the hiatus on exhaustion. Behind the scenes, it was trauma. Then came the moment that halted the room. The prosecutor asked if she had seen criminal behavior. Jennifer paused. Not in a legal sense, she said, but morally, absolutely. There was a girl younger than her, brought in by someone who referred to her as being in training. Like she wasn't even human, like she was a product. Jennifer read aloud from her letter. "I don't want the car, I don't want the contract. I don't want to be someone's puppet with good lighting. I want to survive this industry, that's all." The judge asked if she needed a break. Jennifer shook her head. "No. Because it doesn't matter who I am. Fame doesn't protect you in rooms like that. No one is famous. You're either useful or replaceable." The clerk noted for the record that the testimony was under seal. Jennifer had declined all interviews. What she said in that room would be her only statement. Her voice, shaking at first, became something else by the end of that session. It became a warning. The letter, the transcript. Her silence finally shattered. The prosecutor shifted tone. "What happened after the gala? 5 years of silence," she said. 5 years of pretending she was fine. But in 2017, someone reached out again. A woman named Ariel. She said it was different now. "No press, just peace. The house is gone. The tunnels are sealed. This is about rebirth." Jennifer frozen. She had never spoken of the tunnels. Never told anyone about the second room. The padded walls, the silence, the masks. And yet Ariel knew. Jennifer hung up, reported the call. Her lawyers told her not to pursue it. But the next day, in her trailer on the set of Mother, she found an envelope, no return address. Inside, a copy of the unsigned NDA from 2012, her name typed at the top. A single word scrawled in red reminder. She broke. She didn't tell anyone. But she wrote again in her journal. This time the entry wasn't for herself. If I disappear, send this letter. It wasn't an accident. It started in the Red Room. It ends here. The courtroom was still. The air shifted. The defense didn't speak. Not yet. The prosecutor leaned forward again. Ms. Lawrence, did anyone else from Mr. Combs' circle contact you after that? Yes, she said. Different people. Same energy. The next moment would reshape the case, but it would do something else too. It would redefine Jennifer Lawrence. Not as a celebrity, not as a survivor, but as the first to name the room no one was allowed to describe. Because behind every curtain and every contract was something else, a silence machine. And for the first time in a decade, someone had finally pressed stop. The envelope that Jennifer Lawrence carried into court had been folded and refolded so many times it had softened like fabric. Not a prop, not a prompt, a piece of her. And in the days that followed her first testimony, it would become the center of a silent earthquake. By 2019, Jennifer's name had become more than famous, it had become durable. A symbol of bankability, of carefully managed stardom. She could make a franchise soar or end a magazine's quarter in a single quote. She had done what everyone in Hollywood is taught to do, survive and silence yourself at the same time. She knew how to smile, how to laugh at the joke, and how to deflect. She had learned the posture of composure, the art of talking without speaking. But underneath all of it, the red hallway remained. The smell, the number on the door, the masked woman who wouldn't meet her eyes. The prosecutor asked her a question that hung in the room like fog. Ms. Lawrence, between 2012 and today, did anyone in the industry ever indirectly acknowledge what happened that night? She paused, eyes fixed on the jury, then said, yes, once. It was 2019, the Oscars. A dinner after the ceremony. Loud room, dim lights. Someone older, a woman, not a friend, not a peer. Just someone who'd seen too much and said too little. She pulled me aside and said, I saw your name once. Just be careful who's still watching. Jennifer didn't ask what list. Didn't ask how or when. She just nodded. Because in Hollywood, fear has a language. And that was fluent. April 2022. Jennifer returned to her residence after a no-press, invite-only dinner in the hills. It was supposed to be a quiet night, a few friends, a few glasses of wine. But at 2:37 a.m., her assistant texted her, something at your door, no name, no stamp, just left. Inside the padded envelope was a flash drive, no markings, no note. Jennifer never plugged it in. She handed it directly to her attorney, who sent it for forensic review. It was blank. 2 weeks later, the photographer who had followed Jennifer that evening vanished. Not fired, not reassigned, disappeared. His last digital signal came from Mulholland Drive. His phone was later found without its battery. The screen had been shattered. The case remains open with no suspects. Jennifer's voice dropped. What if that flash drive wasn't a warning? What if it was bait? The judge allowed the pause, allowed the silence to fill the room. A new exhibit was introduced. Exhibit 17H, a recovered internal memo from a public relations firm affiliated with Combs Enterprises. The memo wasn't addressed to anyone specific, but the tone was surgical. It listed a set of strategies under a heading titled High-Risk Talent Contingency Messaging. Under one redacted name, it read, Profile suggests low likelihood of escalation. Brand conscious. Likely to prioritize reputation over disruption. Predictable containment. Jennifer read it aloud. Then she said, they were right. For a long time. She turned toward the jury. I gave them 10 years of silence. They thought they could write the ending for me, but they forgot I write too. The prosecutor's next slide stopped the room cold. It was a partial contract, a scanned image. The watermark of a global fragrance company is visible in the corner. The year 2013, the clause in question was buried on page 37. It read, Client shall refrain from participating in or disclosing any non-public development sessions involving Combs' affiliated figures, past or present. Jennifer testified she had never signed that contract. It was offered as part of a multi-million-dollar endorsement deal. The clause was unlike any she had seen before. It wasn't about brand morality. It was about silencing futures, silencing memory. Another contract followed in 2015. Different companies, same clause. Jennifer declined again. Her voice is steady now. They were trying to close the loop, to make silence part of the system. Then came the most devastating moment yet, Exhibit 17K. A scanned printout of a congratulatory press release dated March 2023. Jennifer had been nominated for a Creative Empowerment Award from an organization she had never heard of, the sponsor Combs Foundation. The quote attributed to her read, "I'm honored to represent young female voices and thank Sean Combs for investing in our future." Jennifer never said those words. The quote was fabricated, so was the award. The entire campaign had been drafted and circulated before Jennifer had even received an invite. She declined the event, released a short public statement. The story was buried in less than 48 hours. "No one asked why I didn't go," she said, "because they already had the ending written. They were just waiting for me to read it." 2 weeks after that, she received a box, no address, no postage, dropped at her building's front desk. Inside, a pair of latex gloves, a vial of red glitter, and a Polaroid. The image was black, no content visible, but across the bottom in handwriting, "You looked better in red lighting." The courtroom audibly gasped. Jennifer paused. The defense attorney started to object. The judge silenced him. She looked at the judge. That wasn't a threat, that was a message. She continued, "Every time I said no, they acted like I disappeared, like I stopped being real." And then she said something no one in the room would forget. "There's this myth in Hollywood that if you play the game, work hard, stay pretty, you'll be protected. That's a lie. I did everything right. And they still came for me." She reached into her lap and unfolded the same letter she had carried on day one. Then she looked directly at the jury. This letter was written before the awards, before the red carpets, before the interviews. "This isn't my past. This is my baseline. I've just finally returned to it." The prosecutor's tone had shifted. No longer was this just about individual memory. Now it was about infrastructure, intent, proof that the system wasn't accidental, it was designed. And the next location they mentioned made the entire courtroom lean forward in their chairs. "Ms. Lawrence, are you familiar with the property located at 11 Star Island Drive in Miami?" Jennifer hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I was there once, briefly," she explained. "It was 2014. She was promoting Mockingjay. A producer connected to a streaming platform invited her to a post-event gathering. Private, exclusive, just industry. The kind of thing no agent would advise turning down. The address, a mansion on Star Island. She arrived late, around 11 p.m., music low, lights red, drinks already poured. Phone bags were handed out at the door. She was told it was a wind down, a place for press and talent to relax. But nothing about the room felt relaxed. 4 leather couches, a marble bar, a wall of mirrors tinted from behind. Movement without sound behind the glass. I was handed a drink I didn't ask for. A woman sat next to me. I said I looked tired, that I should lie down. But before she could respond, another woman older leaned in and whispered, "You don't belong here, sweetheart." Jennifer left before midnight. 3 days later, during the X-Men Apocalypse press tour, she found a note, folded into the sleeve of a leather jacket gifted by the studio's wardrobe department, not signed. Just a short message written in her own handwriting, but dated and unfamiliar to her memory. That room had 3 cameras. One was above the mirror. "Tell your team nothing." Exhibit 18A, a scan of the note time-stamped by her assistant, confirmed the message had been with her for days. The courtroom froze again. The prosecutor's next question was quiet, but devastating. "Did you ever see any footage from that night?" Jennifer's answer came slowly. "Not from that night. But I saw something." She described a laptop left open on a table by a brand rep during a commercial shoot for a skincare line. She was flipping through mock-ups when the file tree flashed on screen. One folder, labeled simply Event. She clicked, out of reflex. 12 seconds of uncut footage, a leather chair, a red room, the unmistakable outline of the mirror wall. No faces, no names, but the movement, the silence, the atmosphere identical. I didn't know who was in it, but someone knew I'd seen it. 2 weeks later, her trailer was broken into. Nothing was stolen. Her clothing was hung backwards, scripts reversed, mirrors wiped clean. Everything is symmetrical, too perfect. That's when I knew. It wasn't random. It wasn't one night. It was all connected. The prosecutor adjusted her glasses, her tone hardening. "Ms. Lawrence, what happened next?" Jennifer hesitated. There was a phone call, from someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a former assistant. She said, "They're asking about the letter." I asked her how they knew. She said, "They always knew." The courtroom sat in absolute stillness. The next exhibit was introduced, Exhibit 18B, a redacted legal document tied to an arbitration agreement for a high-profile brand campaign. One clause buried deep stated, "Client acknowledges the confidentiality of all historical developmental experiences and agrees not to disrupt brand legacy with unverified personal recollections." Jennifer's voice hardened. They didn't care what happened. They cared what might be said. Then came Exhibit 18C, a contract for a global beauty campaign she had turned down. This time the clause was clearer: client forfeits arbitration rights in matters of emotional conduct or legacy disruption tied to mentorship-based development experiences. Jennifer read the phrase aloud, "legacy disruption." That's what they were afraid of. Not me, not the truth, just the echo. The prosecutor asked if she believed other women had received similar offers. Yes. One in particular, bigger than me. She was scheduled to attend the same retreat I declined in 2020. She canceled 2 days before the flight. Never said why. But she texted me one sentence: "If you value peace, don't go. There are mirrors there." The phrase stopped the court. Jennifer continued, "In those circles, mirrors didn't just mean reflections. They meant surveillance. You weren't being seen. You were being documented." She paused. I thought staying silent would protect me, but all it did was make their archive cleaner. A murmur passed through the gallery. Then Jennifer told them about the gala in 2022. It was a fundraiser. Downtown LA. I was in the coat check area when a man approached me. He was older. I'd seen him before. He said, "Still walking around like you're untouchable, huh?" I asked what he meant. He said, "You should have signed the first time." Jennifer looked at the jury. That's when I told my team I'm done. I'm not afraid of these people anymore. The judge called for a brief recess, but no one moved, not even the bailiff. Jennifer hadn't just survived the machine. She had found its reflection, and now, one by one, she was breaking its mirrors. Jennifer returned to the courtroom the next morning, without makeup, dressed in a simple black suit. She carried no files, no folders, just the same worn envelope folded once more. If the previous day had been about evidence, today was about the aftermath. No smiles, no flashbulbs, no pretenses. This was not a performance. It was reckoning. The prosecutor wasted no time. "Ms. Lawrence, did you ever speak to Ms. Ventura Cassie after her civil lawsuit became public?" Jennifer nodded. "Once. Privately." She described a moment of unscheduled clarity. Back hallway of a studio lot. No entourage, no publicists. Just 2 women who had seen too much. She hugged me and said, "Thank you for not asking questions back then. I couldn't have answered them." The courtroom held its breath. Jennifer testified she had seen Cassie before, not on red carpets, But in those rooms, rooms with candles, rooms with lists, rooms with watchers, rooms no publicist mentioned and no script prepared you for. At the time, she didn't know what she was seeing. Cassie did. The next exhibit introduced was Exhibit 18I, a legal email chain dated from 3 years prior. Cassie's legal team had requested confirmation of a letter written by Jennifer in 2012, the one she now carried. Her attorney had submitted it under seal during an unrelated deposition. It had sat in the evidence vault since then unread, until now. Jennifer was asked to read the final lines aloud. "I am not a victim. I am not a product. I am not a secret. If this letter ever reaches you, it means I chose myself over your silence, and you don't own me anymore." She folded the letter and placed it gently on the witness stand. It didn't tremble. She didn't either. The judge asked if she had anything further to add. She did. She looked at the jury. "The first time I saw Cassie, she was walking through a door she didn't want to open. And now she's the reason I opened mine." The room was silent for a full 30 seconds. Then came the final bombshell of the day. "Ms. Lawrence," the prosecutor said, "has anyone from your former management team attempted to interfere with your testimony?" Jennifer didn't hesitate. "Yes, 3 weeks ago, through an old assistant. The message said, 'We all have things to lose. Don't lose yours over a letter.'" Exhibit 18J, verified, entered into evidence. Jennifer lowered her voice. "I slept with that letter under my pillow that night, because I knew it was already written into their contracts, their deals, their legacy statements. My silence had been monetized before I ever signed anything." The prosecutor stepped back, then asked just one final question. "Is there anything else you'd like to say on record?" Jennifer didn't pause. "Yes, I want to talk about what happens after." The courtroom quieted even more. All movement stopped, after the smiles, after the applause, after the magazine covers, after the standing ovations, after the world says you're so lucky, but forgets to ask if you're okay. She inhaled slowly. "I've stood on the biggest stages in the world, held golden statues, worn gowns worth more than some people's homes, and none of it erased that hallway, that smell, that sound." She leaned in. "Sometimes when I hear applause, I wonder if one of the people clapping was in that room." The court clerk stopped typing. "I'm not here for pity or revenge. I'm here because I know there's a girl watching this trial right now, wondering if anyone will believe her, even if she never says it out loud." Jennifer reached into the envelope. She pulled out a journal page, folded twice, dated, handwritten. She held it for a long moment, then unfolded it with care. "This was the last thing I wrote the night it happened." She read it aloud. "I got out, but I still carry the door inside me." The courtroom was still. The air didn't move. Then came the final words. "I was never supposed to testify. I was supposed to vanish gracefully, quietly. That's what they always count on. But not this time, because I'm still here. And now the door is open." But she didn't stop there. Jennifer requested permission to make a final clarification. The judge allowed it. She stood straighter. "There's something we haven't named," she said. "We've said system, we've said silence, we've said infrastructure. But what we're really talking about, what we've always meant, is trafficking. Not always physical, sometimes emotional, sometimes economic, sometimes spiritual. But it's the same engine." Her voice never cracked. She continued. "Because when you are recruited, monitored, silenced, rewarded, discarded, when your presence is conditional, on not speaking, on not remembering, on not connecting dots, that's not just bad business. That's organized coercion." She walked to the front of the courtroom, paused at the edge of the witness stand, and faced the judge. "This trial isn't just about me, or Cassie. It's about whether a machine can run on silence forever." The judge didn't respond. The courtroom didn't blink. Jennifer stepped back. "I've spent a decade being told I should be grateful. Grateful for fame, grateful for access, grateful for escape, but I'm done being grateful for surviving something I was never supposed to be in." Then she nodded once and sat down. Day 10. The courtroom was full before the doors opened, not just with journalists, observers, and legal analysts, but with something less visible, more powerful: anticipation. Jennifer Lawrence had ended her testimony the day before with a phrase that trended globally within hours: "I'm done being grateful for surviving something I was never supposed to be in." Now the question wasn't whether she would continue speaking. The question was, who else might start? The prosecutor opened with new evidence. Not testimony this time, but behavior. Search histories, internal monitoring files, digital footprints of fear. She presented logs of legal inquiries made over the past 6 months, searches for Jennifer's letter scans for unexecuted NDAs, and metadata from encrypted internal emails from multiple entertainment firms. They weren't looking for content. They were looking for control. Jennifer was asked if she'd been contacted since her statement. "Yes," she said. An anonymous card, no signature, just one line: "You were never supposed to remember." Then came the reveal of Exhibit 19A, a screenshot of a deleted Slack channel labeled Recovery Risk Monitoring. The chat dated back to 2020. A handler had messaged, "She's still walking through the storm like she doesn't smell the smoke." The prosecution let the silence land before asking Ms. Lawrence, "What does it feel like to know you are monitored?" Jennifer didn't blink. "I always knew, I just didn't have the words for it." That's when the case turned. 3 other names appeared, redacted from public view but known to the court. All women. All tied to the same retreats, the same production campaigns, the same circular contracts with the same buried clauses. Each had declined to testify. Until now. The prosecution submitted written declarations coded for safety, but unmistakable in substance. Each statement included the phrase, "She gave us the room back," meaning Jennifer's voice hadn't just exposed something, it had reclaimed space that once belonged only to fear. Then the prosecution introduced something no one expected: a child's drawing, found tucked inside a file cabinet in a converted office used by Combs-affiliated brand teams. A sun, a house, a hallway, and a red door. What made the drawing unsettling wasn't its crude innocence, but the detail. The hallway was labeled Guests, the red door Training. The prosecutor paused. This was found with employee onboarding materials. The original artist is unknown, but the symbolism is not. Jennifer lowered her head slightly, then spoke. "They trained us so well, we started forgetting how to name what we saw. That's why I wrote the letter in the first place. Not to remember, but to protect what hadn't been erased yet." Then came a new thread. The prosecution presented archival footage from a 2013 investor panel hosted by a production partner later linked to Combs Foundation. In it, a young Jennifer can be seen walking off stage abruptly mid-interview. At the time, the media called it exhaustion. Now, context reframed it. The footage was played for the court. Jennifer watched it in silence, then said softly, "That was the week after the first retreat invitation. They sent someone backstage, told me I had obligations. I walked off instead." This triggered the introduction of Exhibit 19B, a draft brand campaign agreement from 2014. In red ink were the words, "Ensure alignment before panel week." Jennifer turned to the jury. This wasn't a conversation. It was choreography. Then came something that shifted the entire day. An anonymous tip had arrived during the lunch break. A sealed envelope. Inside a photograph, grainy, poorly lit, clearly old. But in the image were 2 chairs, a woman with a microphone, and in the far mirror, Jennifer's reflection. She confirmed it. The room was real. The judge called for verification of the source, but the moment had landed. Outside the courthouse, silence stretched like caution tape. No commentary, no shouting. Just a line of people, mostly women, waiting to enter the building. Some held signs. One read, "She walked out. Now we can too." The courtroom reconvened. Jennifer was asked one final question for the day. "Do you believe there are others watching this trial who recognize the same rooms?" She answered clearly. "Yes. Some are watching, some are waiting, some are still trying to forget." She paused, but now they know what to call it. Inside, Jennifer remained still. She wasn't the only one anymore. The final day. No cameras were allowed, no media pool, just transcripts, notes, and the weight of what had already been said. Jennifer Lawrence returned not as a witness, but as a presence. Her testimony had ended, but the room still held her shape. The prosecution had one last motion, not to present new evidence, but to make the courtroom see what was already there. The prosecutor walked the jury through the architecture not of a building, but of a system. Diagrams of contracts, diagrams of relationships, not conspiracy coordination, not rumor rhythm. A timeline of invitations, a timeline of disappearances, a timeline of silence. Jennifer sat quietly beside her attorney, hands folded. The envelope is now sealed. Not because it was over, but because it had done its job. Then a voice was heard from the gallery, a young woman, anonymous. The judge allowed her to speak. She said she had once auditioned for a mentorship program, sponsored by the same names in the case. She was 19. She made it through 2 rounds. Then she got an invitation to an event off the record. "I didn't go," she said, "because of a Reddit thread about a red room and a letter." The courtroom froze. The prosecutor requested a sidebar with the judge. What followed was unprecedented. The court would allow a short, voluntary open statement session for anyone present with first-hand corroborative experience. 3 women stood. One cried. One stared forward unblinking. One said nothing, just nodded when asked if she had once seen Jennifer at a retreat, but didn't know how to help. Jennifer never turned around. She didn't have to. Her name was no longer on trial. Her silence had ended. A final exhibit was presented, 19F, a hand-drawn map submitted by an anonymous source. It matched Jennifer's 2012 letter almost perfectly, hallway symbols, the rooms marked with codes instead of names. One room had a red X, another a mirror drawn with broken edges. Jennifer leaned in, whispered something to her lawyer, then asked permission to say one last thing. The judge allowed it. She stood, faced the gallery. "There's something I've learned," she said. "Every system that relies on silence is terrified of echo. That's what we are now. Not evidence, not victims. Echo." She looked directly at the jury. "You can't seal an echo." And with that she sat. The courtroom adjourned at 4:56 p.m. No verdict yet. But the culture had already shifted. One article headline the next morning read, "She didn't just break the silence. She rewrote the room." On the courthouse steps, Jennifer didn't stop, didn't wave, didn't speak to the press. She walked straight ahead, envelope in hand, and behind her the door stayed open.